Today we're going to be going through how to solve an integer practical problem, which is basically how to solve integer word problems. We're going to be using an active reading strategy, which means that we'll be following a certain number of steps throughout our word problems today, and you'll also find the strategy on your note sheet. I'll just read through it now, and then as we practice, the steps will become clear. The first step is that while we're reading the question, we should circle key direction verbs, underline any important information, and draw a picture. The underlining important information piece is very crucial because if there are things that are not important to the question, we need to make sure that we're ignoring any extra information that they give us. The next step is to, in our own words, write what the question is asking us to do. And then the last step is to develop our plan and answer the question. At the top of your note sheet, you should have seen the active reading strategy, and then the next section says that there are vocabulary clue words. These clue words are going to help us figure out if the integers that we're working with are positive or negative. The directions for this section say to highlight or shade the words on your note sheet. It says to use green for positive and red for negative, so that's our key. At this point, you should pause the video and go through each word and write either a little G or an R next to each word to tell you what you think your guess is of what it should be, positive or negative. So go ahead and pause your video now, and then we'll go over the correct answers so you have them in your note sheet. Alright, at this point you should have gone through and made your guesses on if it should be green or positive as you're highlighting. So I'm going to go through and you should make any corrections that you need to, and then we'll have a chance to highlight at the end. The first two words in your note sheet are ascend and descend. Ascend basically means that it is going up, and descend means that it is going down. So as we're going up on our number line, we are going to our positive numbers. As we're going down, we are descending to our negative numbers. Our next two are more and less. These should have been pretty simple for you. More would be a positive number, and less would be a negative number. Our next two are increase and decrease. Increase indicates a positive and decrease indicates a negative. Our next two are withdraw and deposit. These are words that you don't normally see, but we might see when we're talking about money and in our bank accounts. If we're withdrawing money from our bank account, that means we are taking money away from the bank account, so it is going down. While if we deposit money, we're putting money into our bank account, so the total is going up. Our next two words are above and below. Sometimes we will see these when we talk about sea level. So if we talk about above sea level, or sometimes if it's a golf question, we might see above par or below par. And above would be positive, and below would be negative. Our next two words that we have are rise and drop. Again, these should have come pretty quickly to you. If our temperature is rising, it is a positive integer. If it is dropping, then it's generally going to be talking about subtracting or using negative integers. Our next two are gain and loss. Sometimes we'll see these when we talk about football problems. Our next two are up and down. These are pretty self-explanatory. We have a couple more to go through. The next two are also talking about money usually. So if we owe someone money, that means that we owe them negative dollars. We have to pay them back as soon as we get the money. And then if we earn money, then that means that we are adding positives to our bank account. And then another couple of income-related words, money-related words, are income and pay. If we are making an income, that means that we are adding money to our bank account, while if we are paying someone, we are subtracting money from that bank account. So at this point, you should pause the video, go through those words, make sure that you have them highlighted correctly on your sheet, and then we'll be ready to move on when you come back. Alright, let's look at some examples, and we'll talk about how we can use the active reading strategy to help us solve our problems. So I'm going to read through example 1, and then we'll go through the different strategy steps. Example 1 says that the average temperature for Rockford, Illinois on Monday was 12 degrees Fahrenheit. On Tuesday it was negative 9 degrees Fahrenheit. On Wednesday it was negative 23 degrees Fahrenheit. What integer represents the difference in the temperatures between Monday and Wednesday? Now I've already gone through and I've added part of my picture here Whenever we talk about temperature, I like to draw a picture that has to do with our thermometer, and generally thermometers go vertical. So I've already started that. You can go ahead and add that now, but we will continue with the picture when we get to that active reading strategy step. So going through our active reading strategy steps, we've just read the question, and now we need to circle any key direction verbs. So I'm going to go through, and I'm going to circle any verbs that help us. Right here, our integers are pretty much given to us. However, it does talk about, our last question says the difference in the temperatures. That's going to be a key word for us. And now we're ready to go through and underline. It looks like, as I'm looking at my question here, I have what integer represents the difference in the temperatures between Monday and Wednesday. So I'm looking specifically for the temperatures for Monday and Wednesday here. Monday's temperature is going to be important, and also Wednesday's temperature is going to be important. So you should be going through and adding these underlines and circles to your notes as well. Even though it tells us what Tuesday is, that's not important information. The question does not have anything to do with Tuesday, so I'm not going to underline that piece of information. So now I'm ready to draw a picture. As I said, I've already started this picture. It's a vertical number line, and in the middle of our number lines, we're going to put the integer 0. Now, we could go through and make bunches of lines going up and down on this number line, but I only have two numbers that I'm really caring about. I have Monday was 12 degrees, and since Monday 12 is a positive number, I'm going to make a line on above 0 and label it, because remember, our pictures don't mean anything if we don't have those labels on here. So I have 12 degrees Fahrenheit, and this is Monday. I'm going to write myself a little note on my picture. The next key information that I have is that on Wednesday, it was negative 23 degrees Fahrenheit. So someplace below 0, I'm going to make a mark on my thermometer, negative 23 degrees Fahrenheit. And then I'm going to make myself a note that this is for Wednesday. Now again, our problem gave us a bunch of information. It talked about the city, it talked about Tuesday's temperature, but that actually doesn't have anything to do with what they're asking us. We just want to know what the difference is between Monday and Wednesday. So now that I've drawn my picture, I'm going to write in words what the question is asking us to do. That keyword difference is extremely important here. So as I'm going through, I'm going to go ahead and write in words what that means to me. It looks like, since it says difference, that I'm going to be subtracting. So I have Monday's temperature, and then I'm going to be subtracting Wednesday's temperature. And I've used abbreviations there. Again, you should be writing this in your notebook page as well. As we continue looking at our problem, I have to fill in whatever Monday's temperature was, and then subtract whatever Wednesday's temperature was. So Monday was 12 degrees. Wednesday was negative 23. So I have 12 minus a negative 23. Now that I have my number sentence, I'm just going to be using my rules to solve it. So this is a subtraction problem. Remember, I don't like to subtract, so I'm going to change it to an addition problem using same plus opposite, our subtraction rule. So my 12 is going to stay exactly the same. I'm going to be adding the opposite of negative 23, which is a positive 23. As I add those two together, I get the integer 35. And then I remember that it's a word problem, so I need to have a label. So my final answer is 35 degrees Fahrenheit. 35 degrees Fahrenheit represents the difference in the temperatures between Monday and Wednesday. Let's go on to example number 2. Example number 2 reads, a submarine started its mission at 836 feet below sea level. It ascended at a rate of 22 feet per minute. What was the depth of the submarine after 12 minutes? Now there's a lot going on in this problem, so I'm going to be very careful as I'm solving it. I have my submarine here that started its mission at 836 feet below sea level. So I have some direction verbs that are going to give me some information. I know that it's starting the mission at that depth. And then I have another key verb that's going to show me that it's ascending. Oh, my pen got away from me there. So ascended is also a key verb that's going to help us. And then it is asking me for the depth of the submarine after 12 minutes. So let's look for some more important information that I need to underline. Well, the starting depth is important to that question. I need to know where that submarine's starting. So 836 feet below sea level is an important information that I'm going to underline. It also says that I need to look at 22 feet per minute. And then my question gives me the minutes that I'm talking about. So I've got 12 minutes that I'm looking at. So now I'm ready to draw my own picture to help me understand exactly what this is talking about. Well, submarines are underwater, so I'm going to go ahead and draw some waves at the top of my picture. And it's okay that I'm not a perfect artist because I know what they are supposed to be. Now I need to draw my submarine. Well, submarines are long-shaped boats and little telescope things coming out the top and little fin-looking things in the back. I know that my submarine isn't the perfect submarine, but I know what it's supposed to be. It is starting at 836 feet below sea level. So I'm going to make a note here that this is 836 feet below sea level. Remember that below word tells me that I'm using a negative integer, so I need to add that to my drawing. Now it looks like it's ascending. Remember, ascending is a verb that tells us, it gives us a clue that it's going up. So I know that it's going up 22 feet. And I'm labeling this in my drawing. 22 feet per, I'm going to use my division sign because I know that I can use that for the word per minute. And then I'm going to add one more thing to my drawing. That 12 minutes is very important. So I want to know, I'm going to put myself a question mark, where is the submarine? I'm going to use my @ symbol, 12 minutes. Now if your drawing looks different than mine, that's okay as long as it makes sense to you. I put all of my information into one drawing so I know exactly what I'm looking at. So now I'm ready to write what the question is asking me to do in my own words. Well, I know that I am starting at a particular spot and I need to be adding, since I'm ascending, whatever the total change was. Now, I've got to do a couple of different steps here. First, I have to figure out where it's starting, and then I need to figure out where that total change is, how far it ended up going after those 12 minutes, and then I have to figure out what was the final depth. So let's look at the total change first. For the total change, I need to take 22 feet per minute, so I'm going to be multiplying by those 12 minutes. Each minute, I'm going 22 feet up. That gives me a total change of 264 feet. Now I'm ready to put it into that original question that I added here. I wrote start plus total change. I know what total change is. Now I'm looking for where it started. Well, I know that it started at, had a little bit of a typo in there that I had to fix. So my submarine is starting at 836 feet below sea level. Remember that below sea level tells me it's a negative integer. So I'm ready to put all that information together. So I've put the depth that it started at, negative 836, and I'm adding 264 to that. As I'm using my rules, I know that I've got different signs here, so I need to take the sign from the bigger absolute value. Well, 836 is much bigger than 264, so my final answer is going to be negative. And then I have to subtract 836 minus 264 to get my final answer, which is 572. Now I have to put a label on that. So this submarine ended up, after 12 minutes, it was 572 feet below sea level, or negative 572 feet. Let's look at example number 3. Example number 3 says that you owe $225 on your credit card. You make a payment of $55 and then a purchase of $87 worth of clothes at Old Navy. So it's asking what's the integer that represents the balance owed on the card. So I've read the question, now I'm ready to circle those key direction verbs. This owing tells me important information. Owing money is one of those verbs that we talked about, those vocabulary words that are very important in this unit. Then I also have that I am making a payment, and I'm just going to circle payment for that. That payment tells me that I am paying money off of that card. And then I am also making a purchase, which is another keyword. And then I'm looking for the integer that represents the balance owed on the card. So now I'm ready to underline the information. I already owed $225. I'm looking for the information that makes sense that I need to underline, that I know that I need for the end answer. That payment, I need to know exactly how much that was. Well, it was $55, so I'm going to underline that. And then I have a purchase of $87, so I'm underlining that $87 piece as well. So now I'm ready to draw my picture. Now this picture is going to look a little bit different because this is kind of a list of transactions. So I'm kind of thinking about how you would draw your checkbook. So I have my beginning balance. My balance tells me, and I'm going to shorten this up, that I owe $225. Now, owing money, remember that key word, that tells me that I'm starting out with a negative. Now, I'm also going to make a payment. So I'm making a list of all of my important information. Sometimes if you can't think of a drawing to draw, you can just write out your important information, and that can kind of count as your picture. I'm pulling it out of the word problem and writing it in a way that makes sense to me. And then I also have another purchase of $87. Now that $87 is money that I'm paying for clothes, so I need to subtract that. That's going to be a negative integer as I'm using it. So now I need to know what my ending balance is. After all that happens, I want to know what happens at the end. So my drawing is complete. I'm ready to move forward with my number sentence. So I need to write in my own words what the question's asking me to do. Well, I'm taking wherever I started, and then I'm going to add any transactions that I'm making on that card. Well, I know that where I started was negative $225, and then I paid off some of that money, so I got closer to zero. I'm adding some positives there. I'm adding 55, and then I need to also reflect that purchase, which was a negative 87. So I need to add up all of that information. As I'm going through, I have two numbers that I'm going to use first. When I solved negative 225 and I added 55, I know that 225 is bigger than 55, so my final answer needed to be negative, and then 225 minus 55 is 170. And then I need to just add that negative 87 as well. Now, when I have a negative and a negative, I know that my final answer is going to be negative, and then just add those numbers together, and I have negative $257, which means that I owe $257. Okay, we have one more example to work through. Example 4 reads that during a 5-day work week, the stock market decreased by 65 points. I'm looking for the average daily change in the stock market for the week. So I'm looking for any key direction verbs. I see one that's really standing out to me, that word decreased. That is an important word that we talked about, gives us some information on where my integer is going. If it's decreasing, that means that it's going down, and I need to know exactly how much it's going down, so I'm going to underline that important information. That's 65 points. Another piece of information that I need to know is that it is a 5-day work week. So over 5 days, how much did it decrease each day? So as I've already circled, I've already underlined, I'm ready to draw that picture. So whenever I think about days, I kind of think about a calendar. So I've got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and remember this is just a 5-day week, so I'm going to end it Friday, Thursday, and Friday. And over all this time, no, I didn't go quite far enough. Over all this time, it went down, it decreased negative 65 points. And I want to know how much for each one of these days. So I'm going to draw question marks because that's what I'm trying to figure out. How much did it decrease for each one of those days? So now I'm ready to write in my own words what the question is asking me to do. I'm going to take that total change and divide it by the number of days. When it says the average daily change, I know that I have to divide to figure out how much was each day. We're spreading it out evenly. My total change was negative 65, and I'm dividing it by a positive 5 because I have 5 days. And as I'm using my rules here, I'm going to look at Mad Bob. A negative divided by a positive gives me a negative answer. 65 divided by 5 gives me 13, so negative 13 is my answer. So my average daily change in the stock market was negative 13 points per day. Remember, we can always go back in our video to make sure that we have all of our notes written down and everything that we need to make sure that we will have our tools when we go to do our homework or any other assignments in class.